going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about Jiu-Jitsu belt levels, what it looks like, the timing, what you can expect if you're just starting Jiu-Jitsu or you are maybe about to step into school and you just want to know a little bit more. So I've been training for about close to 8 years. I'd say like 7.5. I lost count a little bit because we didn't have as much social media time back then. I mean, 8 years ago it was around, but I just didn't capture every single moment like I enjoy doing now. So the first time that I started Jiu-Jitsu, I was a white belt. I would say a little bit longer than average. Depending on how often you train, that's really important. Second is going to be how much you attain the information and execute what you're learning. And then obviously the third is the consistency of showing up and showing out, practicing, executing, showing up, helping others. There's a lot. What I can say is it's case by case. So do your best not to compare somebody else's timeline with yours. It's good to have an idea of when someone started and when you started and kind of watch and see, but be very cautious not to compare and bring yourself down based on the belt ranks and the levels and the stripes. So what it looks like is when I started as a white belt, I was a white belt for about a year, I want to say, maybe a little bit over. The reason why it was about a year and a half. The reason why I was a little bit longer in getting a blue belt, because I trained like 6 days a week, all the time. I was in there, hook, line, and sinker, constantly training, and I loved it. But I moved, and so when I moved, you have to almost reintroduce yourself to new school, allow them to see what you've learned, how you execute, and then it goes off of that professor, right, that you're gonna be under and what they think and how they rank their Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. So I took a little bit longer. I would say on average, if you're training a lot, if you're being consistent, and if you're attaining the information, it's not uncommon that you're going to be a white belt for a little over a year, maybe about a year, depending on, once again, how often you're training, how strong you're executing, and then what the teacher or professor is seeing. And that is really, really important. Now, when you get to blue belt and above, it starts to drag out a little bit more. And for every belt, you'll see that there's 4 stripes. So every few months, when they see that you're improving, when they do a belt promotion, some of them are actual dates, some of them it's when they see and feel that you're ready, they'll give you a stripe. Usually they're not really back to back, it's every few months that you may receive one. Obviously, the more time you take off, expect the stripe to come later on. So this belt, the blue belt, I was a blue belt for, oh crap, how long was I blue belt? I'd say I was a blue belt for about 3-ish years, and I moved schools again as a blue belt. So I think I was like a 1 or 2 stripe blue belt when I moved schools, and I came to South Carolina. And when you move schools, like I said, it might take some time back, but also it depends on what that professor is doing and how they think that you can improve before you get promoted. So I was a blue belt, I'd say, for about 3-ish years, more or less, and then I hit purple belt. So on average, from white to black, you're not gonna get promoted to black if you're consistent for 5 years or less. That's not how it works. Usually on average it takes 8 to 10 years to get to black belt if you're consistent, like I had mentioned in the very beginning. So I have been now a purple belt for, I think, 3 years, around 3-ish years. It happened during or right before COVID, and then it was a little bit of a blur. So I'm expecting to be a blue or a purple belt for a little bit longer, for the reason of life. When we went into COVID, we were locked down for some time. I wasn't able to practice as much and go to class. And then we opened back up and we've been training hard ever since. But there was still that gap where I lost some ability to train. And so I have been a lot more patient and actually really laid back in the whole growth of the belt journey. When you're in the very beginning stages, like these two, you are hungry as can be. Now, don't get me wrong, I still want to work my way to black belt. Everybody does. But when you hit purple belt, it's a very different level. You start getting very, very intricate with your game. You want to better things and really become lethal, and so you're hyper focused on different areas and aspects of the game that you do think about promotion, but not as much as you do here. I specifically remember when I was a white belt being like, if I just got to blue belt, and then I got to blue belt and I'm like, man, like this is legit, I'm actually getting good. And then you start getting this weird hype, and it happens to a lot of blue belts. And then about 2 stripes in, 3 stripes in, you start maturing and thinking, okay, I know things, but it needs to be sharper. I need to do better in this area. And you start to see and realize that just going crazy or going really aggressive and hard in things that you think you do well don't really pan out to going into the purple belt level. And I say that because you'll start to experience it around that halfway point, like I mentioned in blue belt. And then I'm guessing from purple to brown, I'll experience another wow moment. But right now, as a purple belt, I would say you start really getting honed in on your game, honed in on the things that you can truly execute, and then trying some harder things or different levels of chokes, arm bars, heel hooks, everything in between. So the belts from start to finish, but you don't really finish because it's just an ongoing, innovative, amazing sport, is about 8 to 10 years. Don't get caught up in the belt ranks though, because like I said, this is an individual journey. So whoever you're starting with or next to, you may not be with them a year from now. They may have something happen and be gone. You may be gone and come back years later if you choose to take a step back. So look at the people next to you, have a focal point of continuing, being consistent, but be very careful not to depend on looking at your progress simply based on the color of belt or stripes that you have. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was encouraging. Remember, everybody's on their own journey. Focus on what you need to do to be the best purple belt, blue belt, white belt you can be, both in your team and just in the sport of jiu-jitsu. And I hope that was in fact encouraging to know that we are all on our own journeys looking to really become 1% better. Thanks, guys.